Viva Las Vegas! Viva Las Vegas! Viva! Viva Las Vegas!
That's right, everyone. Welcome to the How to Retire from NASCAR DFS live preview show. I am your host, Jason Hamlet. And yes, Mr. Swift is correct. NASCAR is in windy Viva Las Vegas for the Pennzoil 400. And if you're like me, you have done absolutely zero research ahead of it. You've been out enjoying life, enjoying leisure, maybe chasing your kids around, maybe fishing. You know, you just had way too much time to look and do some research. But have no fear, because the man joining us today is like our own personal NASCAR DFS GPT from Daily Fan Racing, my buddy, Ryan Larkin. Welcome.
Hey, what's up, Jason? Retired, still not quite true. I'm sitting there last week, no show for us because we said no, Atlanta's a stupid race. And then middle of the day, I see a tweet pop up with core fours and poor mores, and like you give 12 plays out on your Twitter. It's almost like you're back. Are you giving out plays? What's going on here?
It's Atlanta. You don't have to do any research. You don't have to do any investigation. You don't have to, do any. So it was easy. It was just, I've said it. I put a disclaimer out. Very lazy content. Very minimal research. You can see I gave out the 4 chalk plays, dude, and like 4 guys not to play, which all of them turned out to wreck. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
I missed on the main plays though. So,
dude, that race was pretty cool. It was cool. I didn't get to see it. I got some highlights when I got back, but it was my anniversary, and me and the wife got 4.5 hours away from the kids, so we took advantage of that. But it was not the Atlanta race I was expecting. I actually went back and watched last year's race again because I was like, that wasn't what we saw before. What happened there? And so
it was awesome. It was so awesome.
Was very, very cool. And I think seeing the
back
was awesome. So what's that?
NASCAR's back. We're back in the mainstream, baby. Fuck F1, right? 3 wide finish last week, right? Numbers are up. Viral trending moment. 3 wide.
Give it a week and a half.
Suarez in victory lane. You were 1 week off your Daniel Suarez call to win, though. By the way, you were pretty close, right? I just want to say that F1. What was that race determined by? Like a 3-mile lead? What was that?
More than that.
Yeah.
That was a good one. We won't have any F1 slander though, because I still like F1 more than NASCAR. So,
dude, you're just telling you're lying.
I don't care. I don't care if it's a 30-second win or a 1-second win. That's irrelevant to me. The whole F1 game is completely different. Like Alex put, F1's becoming too predictable, and it's true, but F1's always been predictable. Like, I've never experienced F1 where it wasn't dominated by Schumacher or Vettel or Mercedes, or, I have all these F1 cars back here, and I look and it's like Fangio, he dominated the 50s, and then it's, Prost, he dominated the 80s, and I'm just like, whatever. It's always been dominated by someone. So I care about a lot of everything. But this isn't an F1 show.
Yeah.
This isn't an F1 show.
Regardless, I think what we're going to see today might be a little closer to an F1 race than the last 2 weeks. We're definitely out of, the craziness of the super speedways. I've been seeing so many people, right, tweeting out, and it's like been the big thing in the gambling world is like the real season. It's finally starting. It's finally here. First off, what percentage of those guys do you think are going to be tweeting that next week when we roll to Phoenix after they've been smashed this week at Vegas?
Well, no, they'll show their one winning ticket and pretend like all the losers don't exist. So every week is a winning week when you're betting out. But this is the first real race of the season. Obviously, I mean, Daytona and Atlanta are fun, for us to watch, and there's a lot of chaos and a lot of randomness, and that's definitely stuff that we can enjoy. But it's not true racing. Like you don't see the fastest cars win. You don't see the best drivers take over. It's really just a battle of wits and luck. Whereas this week, especially Vegas rewards the fastest cars. The fastest cars, fastest drivers really can take over here, which does lead to some boring races at Vegas at times, for sure, which is what you kind of alluded to before. But it's still nice to get back to like a traditional race that, as long as it doesn't become some weird crash fest, we'll see the cream right to the top, and that's something we can bet on. That's something we can kind of predict better with our DFS lineup. So hopefully that equates to more wins.
Well, great. Well, let's get into it. I know people are there's somewhere in the not too distant future, it'll be 3:15. Somebody will have find this YouTube video and be like, just give me the goddamn plays. Stop talking. So let's get into it. Right. I do want to be a quick note, though, if you did just happen to find this channel because you're looking for advice, we are approaching 400 subscribers. It would be really awesome if you went ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, push us to 400. I think we're like maybe 16 away last I checked. So we should be able to get that today with all you guys tuning in. Also, disclaimer, y'all know I'm new to the hosting game, right? So I'm going to try to ask all the questions that you guys want to know. But if I miss anything, if there's something you want to know, please do not hesitate to ask questions. You guys did a great job last week and contributing to the show, asking those questions. So do the same thing this week. Let's go. Let's dive in. Ryan, let's start us off. Let's talk about the general overall strategy when you come to a track like Las Vegas. Used to be back in my day when we did content, we focused on position differential and dominator points. Is that still the key today?
This joke's going to get really old really quick, but it still gets me every time. Yeah, so this is one of those racetracks that I talked about rewarding the fastest drivers and stuff. You typically see one or two drivers separate themselves from the field in terms of being dominator plays. So they really are the focal point of our lineup building. Last fall, I think Larson led 133 laps, and then Byron led 170 or something in this race last year. So you had to have those guys. They were absolute must. And then we had secondary dominators with Bell leading like 61 and Larson led 63 in the first race here last year. So in both races, we had two dominator setups. And that's pretty much how I like to build for this one as well. The one caveat to that is Denny Hamlin. He's going to kind of potentially throw a wrinkle in that because he's kind of got an easy path to 65, maybe even 70 points, and he doesn't even actually have to lead. So that's an interesting twist. So it could be a one dominator situation where if Hamlin, hits and then you get Larson leading 150 laps again or something, you might not end up on a second dominator. But for the most part, I do really like getting two in my lineups because the trend shows that you're going to get two guys that lead a large chunk here. And so I want to chase that.
Yeah, I can't wait till we start diving into those breakdown of the actual, price ranges. So I want to hear your thoughts on those top guys and how you're going to approach those big doms and that Denny Hamlin up top. But first, I know, this is the first week of the season that we've actually, had practice, that actually mattered, practice on the track. How much do you invest in practice at a track like Vegas? And if you do invest in it, what is it that you're focusing on, if anything?
Not a lot. The 20-minute practice sessions are still going to skew a lot of things just because even when teams get a 20-lap run, like for instance, Priest wrecked in his practice session. That put a dent right in everyone's lap averages, right? Like everyone's 4 laps into the run, Priest crashes, and then their 10-lap runs are ruined. So there's a lot of little variables, and Group A had a better track situation than the Group B. So like certain drivers are putting up better lap times than other ones, and it can just not really be a true indicator of who's actually going to be good. It can be like Larson obviously just looks good, and we trust that because we get the extra little bit of help there. But like a 10-lap average on a track like Vegas where they're running mostly wide open for 10 laps, like there's not a lot of variation. There's not a ton of off-throttle time. So a driver can put up a really good lap time or really good 5-lap time that isn't great. That is great, but they aren't actually good. Noah Gregson's going to stand out like a sore thumb because his practice lap time looked amazing. But when qualifying came and everyone was doing the same thing, he just kind of sucks still. So I use it as a tool. You use everything you can, but there's so many little things that can skew what a driver looks like and make them look like, oh, wow, they're a top 20 play when they're not or what have you. So it's a balancing act. You have to not be too in love with practice times, especially with the current setup.
Yeah, it sounds like there's definitely going to be some landmines in the practice data that we're going to have to, navigate our way through this week as well. So One last question before we dive into these ranges. Last week, obviously, there's a lot of variance. The last 2 weeks, been a lot of variances. Like, and we talked about really varying lineups as far as, construction and you want to get pieces of a lot of different drivers. In this race, however, being Las Vegas, typically a lot more, less crashes, lower variance of a track. Are you more apt to go heavier on specific drivers in a race like this as opposed to last week? Or are you still throwing a wide net this week?
Last week and this week. So I went into last week not thinking it was going to be as carnage filled. And I still think it probably wouldn't have if that lap 2 incident didn't happen. Like, that one was just such a weird incident and it kind of ruined the slate for a lot of drivers. But,
Even without the wreck, though, it's hard to tell. Like, comers and it's still, comers and goers can still be a little fluky, right? Though.
Yeah, and so I still was comfortable going somewhat high on ownership with certain guys. Last week I wasn't too afraid. Like Daytona, I was like, okay, I'm capping some guys. This race is too chaotic. Last week I was comfortable going a little bit higher. This week I'm definitely fine. Like, Larson, we'll get to. Like, if you went like 65%, 70% Larson, I'm not going to think you're crazy on this slate. I think the field is going to be really heavily invested, so you're just dealing with a massive chalk play to begin with. But it kind of makes sense. He's just so far and clear based off of last year, the 2 races here, based on his entire intermediate career, really, and then his practice speeds and just everything kind of leans towards that. There's going to be other plays that I think are going to be really heavy. Chastain, Reddick, Keselowski, right there in that mid-range, are going to save you some salary. If you wanted to be 40, 50% on them, I have no argument there. Cool. I think all those guys kind of come in around that 30% range, maybe 25 for a couple of them, maybe even lower 20s. But I think they all will be in that range, and they'll all have decent ownership, and they'll all be factors into the slate. If you want to go overweight, that's fine. It's just we don't see a lot of crashes here. We don't see a lot of variance, and guys typically deliver good performances year over year. So you can kind of bank on, okay, Brad Keselowski, I know, is a guy that finished top 7 10 straight times here. There just isn't that level of variance that's really going to skew that. So as long as you trust the driver, you trust the situation, you can kind of lean into those plays a little bit more.
Yeah, I like it. All right, so that gives us a good segue into this, where we start talking about the ranges here. We're going to go through each range here. We'll start the 10K range, and that brings us to the man you kind of mentioned here, right? There's definitely some potential dominators to look in this range, and the guy who sticks out, right, top of the odds to win, he's sitting at plus 330 right now to win, starting on the outside front row. One of the fastest cars in practice, obviously, Kyle Larson. I've been told in the past you're not supposed to play chalk Kyle Larson. So tell me how you are dealing with chalk Kyle Larson today.
Yeah, in my breakdown, I was writing him up, and the whole time I was envisioning Homestead last year when he drove into the sand barrels on the entry to pit lane. Like, that just was sticking out the entire time I was saying it. I was like, this is almost a lock. This is the best play. And I'm like, yeah, I remember the last time I thought that. And that's definitely a Larson thing. We've seen it at Darlington. We've seen it at other tracks where you go into it thinking, yeah, Larson's going to go and smash, and then he doesn't. And it's not that he doesn't just go out there and lead 150 laps. It's that he crashes or he does something stupid, because Larson does have that overdriving mindset where he will make mistakes. And so sitting here on a slate where I anticipate him being close to 50% ownership or around that range, just because I think the field's going to gravitate towards him. How often do we see a plus 330 favorite in the Cup Series, right? Yeah. So Larson's going to see a ton of ownership, and you're basically damned if you do, damned if you don't. I think it's going to be split down the middle. It's going to be about 50% ownership. Half the lines are going to be dead at the beginning of the race, and it's whether he dominates or if he wrecks. And so it's a very interesting dilemma. I do think he delivers today. Again, Vegas isn't a high variance track. It would have to take something mechanical, most likely, to take him out. So I'm not going to ever worry about that. But he is such a huge factor in the slate, because he's going to literally half the lineups are going to be decided by what he does in this race.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it sets up a lot like this exact race last year, right? I mean, we were all looking right at Larson here last year, right? Well, for all the exact same reasons that we're looking at him this week, right? And he had a great race, right? But he did definitely underwhelm from a standpoint of like Byron dominated most of that race, right? And if we find ourselves in that situation today where somebody else gets out front and we see Denny Hamlin pay off, it's very easily that Kyle Larson's 12 dominator points and a top 4 might not get there, right? Definitely won't get there, right? So
Yeah,
definitely are more outcomes than him just wrecking here. So where does this put, where does the where does the things lie for you this week when it comes to Larson? If I'm putting his ownership right now, projected ownership at 40%, let's say, is that inaccurate what you think it's going to be? And if that's the case, if that's where it's going to be at, are you going to be wall riding that ownership, with Roush Chastain going way over on it, or are you, pumping your brakes and be coming in a little under?
So I haven't built a lot of lineups, and honestly, when there's a 4-race weekend at this point, my brain's so fried. I'm like, do I really want to spend time building lineups? I got a few lineups in, and I might just call it a day here. One thing I did is I didn't play him on FanDuel, and I did play him on DraftKings. And basically, because you got the fast lap equity on DraftKings that can really separate a driver, I'm afraid of him delivering on DraftKings. And for that reason, I want to play him on DraftKings. And then I'm going to hedge that over on FanDuel, because if he doesn't lead laps, then Denny Hamlin's going to easily supersede that play with his place differential. So I can just pivot to Hamlin, get off of Chalk Larson on FanDuel. And even if Larson hits, he's only going to outscore Hamlin as long as Hamlin has normal race by a couple points. It's not like I'm losing a huge advantage on the field. So I'm kind of hedging my bet between the two sites. But for DraftKings specifically, yeah, I'm going to be very, very, very invested on Larson, because the upside is slate winning. It's not the difference that a pure dominator can make on the slate is so massive. You have to have them. It's not a situation where, you can kind of, no, if you don't have Larson and he hits, your lineup's not cashing, period, in the story. So I don't want to be caught with my pants down against Larson this week. I think it's a very, very good likelihood that he, even if it's only leading 30 laps with 30 fast laps, he's going to put up a good score. I'm not going to miss out if he leads 150, though.
Yeah, well, it sounds like if you were, to give advice to somebody who's playing a lot of lineups right for this week, you would tell them not to go at least don't go under the field on Larson this week. You at least want to probably be in line with where the field's going to be at with your builds.
Yep.
All right. So there's more obviously dominator potential in this top tier here. We can't spend our time talking about Kyle Larson. We got his teammate sitting there, William Byron, dominated this race in the spring, and then Joey Logano sitting there, our pole sitter, right? I've seen the odds move quite a bit since last night. He opened after practice after qualifying 750. Now he's down to 600 this morning. So money is moving on Logano. Who do you like better at the alternative if Larson does not lead early in this race?
The books are loving it, probably, that Logano is getting all this action. Yeah. He opened at 20-1, and I looked at it and I was like, well, that seems wrong. And then someone messaged me about it being like 15-1 or 16-1. I was like, okay, yeah, it's getting closer. And I was like, 12-1 is probably right, but whatever. The difference between 12-1 and 16-1 is not, the payout's different, but like the actual odds of it happening is not that much different. I just don't really care. And I don't think he's going to really factor into the race win today. But I get really nervous with anyone on the pole. And that's because clean air matters so much with this car. And if Logano can get to the lead on the race start, he can absolutely lead the entire first stage and be a dominator play in this event. So that's my big concern with Logano as a play for DFS, is that just getting the lead and checking out for 50 laps, 60 laps is going to put him in the contention. My one caveat to that is if he leads 60 laps and then just falls to 8th place and Hamlin delivers, and then like Larson or Byron, or even if someone else just dominates for 100 laps and wins or whatever, Logano might still not score enough to pay off this price to make you get off of playing 2 place temperature plays. So even 50 or 60 laps isn't a guarantee that he's on a winning lineup. And so I do like still going underweight on that play. I don't think he'll end up leading a ton. I certainly don't think he'll end up winning or finishing top 3. I think there'll be, the same kind of issues as last year where they'll struggle for race pace and things like that. But It's definitely an interesting twist because I don't think he'll see a lot of ownership. I think everyone's going to gravitate towards Larson and Byron over him as dominators. So even the pole sitter is going to be pretty low owned. And it looks like we got a question about that. What's Logano's ownership? I think it's low 20s. I can also see it in the high teens. I don't think he's going to be like 33%. I could be wrong. But for me, I think so much goes to Larson and Byron based off of what they did last year. And keep in mind, this race last year, Logano had the pole and he dropped like a rock through the field. He didn't even score points in the first stage and then ended up crashing out. There wasn't any speed for Logano here last year. I guess it's possible that they just showed up and now are the best car. I don't think so. The practice speeds don't indicate that. Nothing really suggests that Logano is going to be that guy. But I do think it's plausible that he leads 50, 60 laps to start the race, and that could make him a viable play if he can hang towards the front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's definitely going to need to hang towards the front. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't cover Byron. I guess I should throw him in here too because obviously Byron crushed this race last year. He's the perfect pivot off of Larson. I think he may come in at 15, 20% less owned than Larson, which is a huge gap considering the circumstances. But it just feels like Larson is going to be so heavily played, and Byron could be a very good leverage point off that. Yes, you can pair them together, just like last spring where both led and both hit. I think that's fine. But then you look at last fall when Byron just completely busted. He didn't lead any laps. He finished 7th. It wasn't a good showing. And that's the William Byron I know. I feel like Byron does that to me a lot where I play him and then he just kind of no-shows. But we know the upside with him is also really, really good. So all three of those guys are the three main dominator threats of this race for me. Like the three guys I pinpoint and then, secondary options below them, just because of the way the race lines up and the way everything's kind of projected. But with this car, you never know who's going to be good in the race. You never know, if the Toyotas will have the better long run pace and some of those guys will sneak up.
Yeah, I think year over year, though, you see HMS is always the strongest out of the gate. For whatever reason, it just seems like the first month and a half of the season is the HMS show. So I think it's definitely worth, like you said, playing a few lineups with both those Byron and Larson combination. But when you do that, it's going to make it very hard to fit in, some of the obvious PD plays in this range. Let's start with, what you think about those guys. Denny Hamlin and Ryan Blaney are two PD plays that stand out in this range. Who obviously I think Hamlin's probably your best choice, but tell me what you think about those guys.
Yeah, Hamlin's obviously a great play. He hasn't been phenomenal here at Vegas. He's led some laps in like the last 6 races or something, I think, but he hasn't been lights out top 5 contender like he has been at like Kansas or some other intermediates. But we're still talking about a guy, if he finishes 7th, that's going to be 37 points plus 21 place temperature points. That's 58 points without getting a single fast lap. So his floor is really, really good. The expectation should be that he's finishing top 10, as always with Hamlin. And then the upside is that, he does have a car capable of winning the race on any given week. So there's a lot to like about Hamlin. I think that's a really good cash play, obviously. And then maybe you can go underweight in tournaments because he will see a high ownership number. And then maybe he only does hit 57 points or 58 or 59 points. And if Larson leads and Byron leads or Logano leads or Truex or whoever else, we have 2 dominators, that's probably going to outscore Hamlin only scoring 57 points. And so you could potentially leverage the idea that Hamlin has a good race but not a great race. And that could be a really good spot versus trying to leverage Larson domination, which could be extremely risky. If Hamlin just finishes 6th or 7th, my lineups will still have a chance against that if I hit that second dominator, right? So great play, but a little skeptical if he's actually on the winning lineup. And then Blaney, because of the price, and I'm going to throw Kyle Busch into this one as well. I don't think either one of these guys is finishing top 5 in this race. It's not outside the realm of possibilities. Busch is always a contender here at Vegas. Blaney's always a contender. I mean, he's just he's the champion, right? Like he's one of the best in the series right now. But I see like Blaney kind of like a 5th to 8th place guy, and I see Busch like an 8th, 12th place guy. I think HMS and Toyota are just going to have an advantage over RCR, and I don't know if Kyle Busch can out-talent all those guys because, quite frankly, the other guys are really good too. And so I struggle to see them reaching that upside that they need. And for the price point, $10,200 and $9,700, I'd have to get off of other good plays to get to these guys. And so I'm only going to use them as pivots from maybe Larson or maybe Byron or maybe Hamlin. Like if I'm trying to get off of the chalk to someone that's going to be lower owned, these two would be those options. But I don't feel comfortable in their upside of actually contending for the winning lineup. So they're going to be lower owned plays. I think they have good races. Like, I think you'll see Ryan Blaney in 6 and be like, wow, he's having a good race. He's scoring 55 points, whatever. But again, I don't think 55 points or 50 points in DFS matters for 10,200. So balancing the salary aspects and knowing that I'm going to be super heavy on the top 3 in this price range kind of leads me off of Blaney and off of Busch, where I think they just don't have the true upside. I could be wrong, and that's why we always use contrarian plays. We always use pivots. We make sure to cover these aspects. But those are 2 plays that I think people will like to an extent, but just don't really have the upside given or needed to be optimal.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people that's going to pivot off Hamlin are going to pivot to Blaney or to, even Kyle Busch, like you said there, because, those are the obvious PD plays. Blaney just won the championship. Everybody's, fresh in their mind. Like, Kyle Busch, the number has moved on him since last night. He opened at 1,600. He's down to 1,000. So, I know there's obviously, he's going to definitely have some steam starting 21st. So definitely be a lot of ownership. Anybody who doesn't play Hamlin is likely going to have Kyle Busch. So, if you want to play Larson and be different, I would guarantee maybe 60 to 70% of the Larson lines are going to have some either have Hamlin or Busch paired with them probably. So avoiding those 2 guys might be a way to get different.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's roll into that 9K range since we kind of already started talking about Kyle Busch. We can talk about the other potential PD in this range is Ross Chastain, right? Obviously a lot to like about him. So it sounds to me like you'll be leaning Chastain over Kyle Busch in this range.
Yes. So, Kyle Busch has a phenomenal track history here, so I'm not going to go against his history. But I like saving that extra salary. Chastain at 9-1, and anyone who goes and hand builds a lineup right now and plugs in Larson and Byron or Larson and Hamlin or anything substantial in terms of salary at the top, you can see where Chastain fits in better and Busch doesn't. That extra few hundred actually makes a difference here. So one, Chastain's finished top 5, 3 of the 4 races with the next gen car here. I like his aggressive nature. He looked decent in practice, in my opinion. Again, lap times aren't the full indicator, and lap averages don't always tell the whole story. But I do think he looked pretty decent. I just trust him come race time to be aggressive, get up on the wheel on restarts, and gain track position. I really like the Chastain play. I really, really like the Reddick play, and I really like Keselowski as well. These 3 place differential plays all kind of offer the same scenario as Busch. I think Reddick probably has more race win equity of anyone in that group. And you're at 8,900. You're under 9K versus paying 9,700 for what is essentially the same play, but with a little bit more upside. And so when I'm factoring that in and I start building lineups and I'm chasing Larson, I'm not going to end up on Busch as much because the salary is going to dictate that. And so Chastain, Reddick, and Keselowski are going to stand out a lot more. But it doesn't mean Busch is a bad play. If Larson doesn't lead and you have a Byron lineup, well, you just save that salary so you can pay up to Busch at that point. And playing Busch is fine. It's just I'd much rather get Reddick and Keselowski than have to get Busch and Jones or something of that nature. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. And Chastain and Reddick look really good. This is a good track type for them. I think both of them have top 5 equity. I think Reddick looked really good. Now, again, lap average speeds are tricky. But I think Reddick looked really good in practice. Bubba Wallace matched that time. And I think both 2311 cars are going to be strong in this race. And so I have big expectations for Reddick.
Yeah, I think I like your Keselowski call because I think he's going to go drastically under-owned probably for his price and for where he's starting because he's competing against guys like Reddick, Chastain, Kyle Busch, all in that range, right, who are when you look at practice speeds, people like to do, right? You look at Keselowski's practice speed, what fast lap was 28th, 5 lap average was 23rd. So he didn't look, show up with the speed. The other guys, where everybody's going to gravitate to, especially, Keselowski's last 4 races here don't look the greatest either. So I think there's going to be, not a lot of ownership there. So that is a good call out. So let's talk, we talked your PD plays in this range. You kind of mentioned Bubba Wallace here as a guy with some win equity, who the 2311 cars are fast. They're, Toyotas in general should be fast today. What do you expect out of Christopher Bell, Martin Truex, and Bubba Wallace in this range? Are these guys that you think can potentially score dominator points today?
Yeah, so this is the contrarian dominator place. I mean, these are the ones you're targeting off of Larson and Byron, and I think all of them have ability to do so. Bell led 60 whatever laps here last year and finished second. Truex led a ton of laps on intermediates, fast intermediates last year. I wrote up those races in the article, kind of highlighted those, but there's 4 or 5 of them where he led a bunch of laps last year, and Vegas has always been a really good track for him. And so I think if either one of those guys were in the lead at any point, I would not be shocked. Bubba Wallace, same thing. I think Bubba has a great car. Reddick has a great car. I think all 4 of them have really fast cars. And depending on how dominant Larson can be is going to dictate whether these guys can deliver or if they're going to end up not scoring enough for the prices. So it's an interesting dilemma. I do like using these guys as the secondary dominator in a lot of lineups. So if you go Larson, or even if you go Logano, like if you want to build a lineup with neither HMS driver, Byron or Larson, and you want to go Logano early and then like Truex as a second half dominator or Belt, like that's going to be super contrarian. So you can consider that as well. But I think all 3 of those guys are real legit contenders for that. But they could also just run 7th and only score 38 points, 40 points, and not factor into a winning lineup. So definitely risky, but the speed of Toyotas on intermediates over the past 2 years has been untouchable except for Larson and Byron. I mean, like it's been clear Toyotas dating back to Kurt Busch and Bubba Wallace winning at Kansas, for 23-11 and Hamlin basically leading everywhere. So if it's not Byron and Larson, it's probably one of these guys. And so you'll definitely want to have that covered.
Yeah, I like that approach there. Like if you're fading Denny Hamlin, like I think I might be sold on the fade Denny Hamlin train today. Unfortunately, you might have, because if you look at that, like all that PD right in that 9K, 8K range, you got Chastain, you got Reddick, you got Keselowski, you got Bowman, right? Even Bowman, you can kind of.
Oh, we haven't talked about Bowman yet. I'm going to get there in a second.
I know we haven't talked about him. We're going to get to him, but I mean, you got all those guys who offer similar PD to Denny Hamlin, right? So you can go that route for your PD and then pair Larson with a Bell
and save $2,000 in salary too.
Yeah, and then you got all that salary where you ain't got to play some of this junk we'll talk about as we get down to the value range. So, definitely like that idea. So let's move on and start talking about that 8K range. Well, we've already kind of started talking about the 8K range. So let's
get closer to that 7K range.
Let's talk about Alex Bowman, right? Let's start dipping down a little bit. You got Alex Bowman here as this next obvious PD play on the slate. So let's talk about him.
Yeah, Bowman's fantastic. Love Bowman, love the upside he presents. He doesn't have the results to show what his true speed and results should be here. He does have that win, but he has been a consistent contender here. He's finished first and third with the next gen car here, and the other one, I believe he got the 2021, he got a flat tire when running top 10. 2020, he was going to win this race before Ross Chastain spun out on his own late in the race. But Bowman's always been a top 5 threat at this track, and so I love that type of potential from him from 23rd. Like that just screams like the greatest thing in the world for me at 8,100. Anything inside top 5 is probably optimal. Like BC's going to fit in the lineup so well. If HMS are good, if Larson and Byron have speed, I assume Bowman's going to have race pace. I assume he's going to be able to handle that. And really anything inside the top 12 is going to probably be good enough for this play to be really, really well. So I just love the play. I feel really confident in Bowman at Vegas. I think it's a really good track for him. And so I'm not scared off by the fact that, he's not good and he might not be at the level of other drivers. I don't care. This is the perfect scenario for him. And this is a play I'm going to be really heavily invested on.
Yeah, I just talked about HMS being very strong out of the gate, right? Bowman, I mean, when you look at performances here in the next gen car, he is 4th overall in driver rating, so 8,100 starting 23rd, and his ownership's going to be suppressed as well, I feel like, right? Because when you start with Larson and Hamlin, the lineups that start like that is going to be very hard to play multiple guys in that range, and most people are going to choose,
I think it's more suppressed because people don't like them. I think people just don't like them, and it's just weird. Like they did it with Bubba Wallace all last year. They do it with certain drivers where it's like he should be a 30% owned guy, but he comes in at 22% because people just don't like him. And that's just like a public perception thing. But I think Bowman's a phenomenal play in this range. Like he should be 35%, in my opinion, like that good of a play. But he probably comes in 20 to 25%, which is great for me. I'll take it.
All right, let's get down, start talking the 7K range here. 7K range with 7,800 down. We start with last week's winner, Daniel Suarez, offers a little bit of PD, starting 16th there. And then you got a guy like Ty Gibbs right below him at 7,600, starting 8th. Who, where do you see him at for, does he have potential dominator value this week? We've seen him kind of lead some laps, here recently. And then are you going back to the Suarez as well this week?
I'm not really interested in Ty Gibbs. Still at 7.6K. I think it's a tough ask. I'm not picking him to lead over Bell and Truex and Bubba and any of those guys within the same Toyota camp. Now, the argument could be made that if Ty Gibbs finishes 5th with some fast laps, he can score well for and that's kind of what your expectation should be if you're trying to go with that play. He just hasn't done that. And so you're at that point, you're banking on something that he hasn't been able to deliver at the Cup Series level. He's got 5th place at Pocono and then a couple of top 5s on road courses. Like it's just not something that he's really done. He was 7th at Homestead last year. Homestead's definitely a different indicator, but 22nd and 34th here last year, 22nd in 2022 with the 2311 team. I'm not sure that Vegas is a great track for him in terms of suiting his style, let alone the fact that it's just such a tall ask to see him finish, top 5. So not a big fan of that. Suarez is interesting because he's been extremely hit or miss on intermediates. He would show up and show top 3 speed at times over the last 2 years. And then also he's Daniel Suarez and will run 23rd. And you never know which one's going to show up. So the upsides we're chasing because I do think he's a potential sneaky top 5 threat, but it's extremely risky, and he could also hurt lineups. And then also still 7.8K is a lot to spend on a risky tournament option. So I'm not in love with that one by any stretch, but I've seen him run top 5 enough with this car on this track type to think that's possible.
Where do you fall with the other Toyotas in this range? I know we've had some high hopes for the Legacy Motorsports crew heading into the season. Obviously we haven't seen, we've had some Atlanta and Daytona to start the season, so I don't think we really got to see what they have. So where do you think with Eric Jones starting 22nd, John Hunter Nemechek starting 27th, both in that, 7,400 to 6,700 range?
Yeah, little nervous about their speed in this race, but I think they'll be kind of comparative to the rest of the field. I know people don't like F1, but one of the things that we saw in the race the other day is that basically 10th through or 11th through 20th, actually the Alpine suck, 11th through 18th were within about like a 10th of a second of each other, which is a lot on a road course. And so Zhao, who qualified at the very back, ended up finishing 11th with a great run simply because he got track position. And the field in that range was so close. Well, the same thing applies here from about 15th or 18th on back to about 30th, where all these guys are really close, and track position is really just the key to them having a good race. And Eric Jones, I think, is one of the top 15 best drivers in the Cup Series. I almost put him in my top 10. I think he's that good. I think situationally in his career, he's been kind of hampered. But I think Eric Jones is a supreme talent, and it's just not being shown because of the equipment. John Hunter Nemechek's hit or miss, but he's also got really good talent. His upside on any given week is going to be good. From 22nd and 27th, they offer a safety net of, okay, if they just run there, it's a whatever score. I'm not too worried about them like falling from 13th to 23rd, right? But the upside is that I think Jones could finish 12th. I think Jones could sneak into a top 10 occasionally. I just don't know if they'll have the speed on this week because outright speed is going to be the key. And Vegas is so reliant on having that pace in your car. I worry about them having it and being able to deliver. So I'm still going to go under on Jones. 7.4K still a little bit much for me. 20 seconds, not great. But I think John Hunter Nemechek is going to be a bit chalky. Under 7K, 27th. I feel like everyone saw him dominate the race, and therefore it's going to be a situation where they're like, yeah, let's put him in there as one of our 2 cheap options, and the expectation that he can finish top 15. Possible, certainly possible, but I don't love the play, and I think it's more likely that he kind of fizzles out around 20th than actually hits big.
Yeah, I think you're pretty. I think you're accurate there with where his ownership's going to be, probably the highest in at least that range from 6,300 to about 7,400. He's definitely the guy that sticks out from starting 27th. Is there anybody else in this range though that you think has the upside to make it worth to pivot to? I mean, there's like you have Chase Briscoe starting 6th, Stenhouse starting 13th, Dillon starting 19th, Cindric starting 3rd, and McDowell starting 12th. Does any of those guys scream out as a potential pivot option?
Yeah, I just want to talk on two people real quick. I know we want to wrap this thing up very quickly. McDowell finished 7th and 9th at 2 intermediates at the end of last year. That's what you're hoping for with that play. He's done it a couple times, unlike Gibbs, who's I've never seen really finish top 5 on this race, race type or whatever. McDowell's done it, so I want to at least give him some praise. And then if you think Logano is going to go out there and lead, and you think the Penske Fords are going to have that kind of true speed in the race, well, Front Row is now a Penske affiliated team, right? They're getting information from Penske, and there's no reason to think that can't trickle down to McDowell and give him a top 10 shot here as well. So if you're kind of on Logano and you're on these Penske cars to go out there and have that type of speed, then there's a chance that McDowell just has that kind of speed. So keep that in mind. And then Austin Dillon, last 2 races here were bad, but before that he was 13th or better in 4 straight. No one wants to play him right now. He's got the worst luck in the history of the freaking world. But 19th to 12th or something at 6.8K when no one else in this range hits, I think that could be something that works. So, I don't feel good about it. I feel like there's a big confidence issue here with Austin Dillon. Like it feels like the wheels are coming off, but it could work. It could work. So I'll give it a little love. But outside of that, all the way down to LaJoie, I want no part of these guys really. If I lose to them, so be it. I'm just not going to invest in that.
Was LaJoie included in that?
Yeah, don't want LaJoie. I mean, LaJoie could finish 13th. That would be an amazing day for them. I don't think he's ever really done that. 13th scores him like 34 points. Cool. I think Ryan Preece needs like 22nd or 23rd to match that. So, you're battling a lot of place differential options that are cheaper that can probably reach the same upside. So I just don't really trust a play like that.
Well, let's dip down and talk about those value plays that offer us a ton of PD options, right? Mainly in that out of that, Stewart-Haas Racing camp. We've seen lacking speed a little bit, at least out of the gate in qualifying, right? But for whatever reason, it looks like somebody had speed in practice. You touched on it a little bit. Noah Gragson put down some fast laps in practice. So you got Noah Gragson starting 30th and Ryan Preece starting 36th. Really chalk options here. Are we just going to eat this chalk or what?
Yeah, it's almost like the race team that owns their own wind tunnel really starts sucking when NASCAR stopped letting them use their wind tunnel all the time. It feels like there's a correlation there. But yeah, this is I listen, I think Stewart-Haas is the worst team in the sport right now. Rick Ware Racing doesn't count. Like of all the regular big teams, like Stewart-Haas Racing has been bad. Kevin Harvick absolutely carried them for the last 2 years, but this team is just fundamentally bad and lacking speed. So I hate even playing them right now at 30th for Noah Gragson and stuff. But there's just too much upside. There's too much potential. We saw last year Preece and Briscoe be the real guys that struggle with this, but they ran 30th on a lot of intermediates. Not like, they finished there, whatever. No, they were the 31st best car. JJ Elliott was kicking their ass. It was not pretty. And so I sit here thinking, what if Ryan Preece just runs 31st? What if there's just no speed?
It feels like a trap, dude. It does. It feels like a trap.
And so Gragson, Preece, I like the plays because of where they fit, but I also am like, do I just pay down for everyone else that's a few $100s cheaper with the same theoretical upside? And so I'm kind of torn. I think I'll be on Preece in cash. I think I'll be on Preece just because, like, if Ryan Preece gets to 24th, that's 18 points plus 12, that's 30 points. 24th scores him 30 points. I don't need a huge day from him. Just top 25, please. And you kind of delivering what I need. And then Gragson from 30th. But I think Noah Gregson's not a good driver. So fundamentally, I'm afraid to play him. I don't want to invest much money in him because I think he just runs 28th most weeks. It's similar to Harrison Burton, right? Like we say Harrison Burton and we're like, I don't want to invest in that because when's he actually going to deliver consistently? And so both those guys worry me. And then Todd Gilliland probably interests me the most. His practice speeds were awful, but 31st to 20th seems realistic. And I think he's potentially the best driver of these four, like Barry included. Like, I think Gilliland might be the best driver of the group. I know there's a lot of Ryan Preece fans that'll disagree, or maybe, but like, I think Gilliland might be the best stock car, driver. This isn't even a stock car anymore, but they ruined our sport, man. Gilliland's just the better option in my opinion, and he's cheaper. But again, I can see him running 27th and not working out. So this whole range is just kind of ew, but you have to play it. You have to play it because you got to have Larson, you got to have Byron, you got to have those guys. You're going to play a lot of Hamlin. You're going to play all those top end guys. You're not going to be playing a bunch of 8K range guys. You're paying up. And the way to do that is to play one guy from this range and the one guy from the range below it. And so I think you're going to see a decent amount of ownership on all of them. And then, but my favorite plays are actually below them in this range.
Yeah, I think the price on those guys is definitely probably what gets you there. I do feel like though we're gonna be at the end of this and like Gregson and Preece will have ran 27th and 28th, and we'll be like, yeah, no shit they did. Like, duh, what'd you expect, right? And like, yeah. I mean,
something that always pops in my head when I think about the next gen car, like I think the car looks awesome. But I envision Harry Hyde from Days of Thunder working on his car in a shed. And like, that's the image that pops in my head. I'm like, that's what we used to have. And now we have this like stock car or this, spec car. And so it's just, it's weird. We did get a question on Barry thoughts. I didn't really touch on him. I don't think Barry's that good personally. Like, I don't think he's going to over exceed the car or bring in a lot more performance. And he doesn't offer the place differential that Gregson and Preece do, who are his own teammates. So I don't really like the play. It's definitely going to be contrarian. I think he'll see really low ownership. I'm just kind of fearful of him even doing anything remotely good. But as I mentioned, if any of these guys get track position, if they stay on the lead lap and they can finish like 16th, they're going to be huge, great plays. So they all have some viability. We've seen it on intermediates in the past, but it's definitely not a play I'm too interested in.
All right, so who are the guys that you like to pivot to? I know you say you like some plays who are cheaper here. So are these the guys you'll be pivoting to in this range? Who are they?
Yeah, so first off, Daniel Hemrick. I have long been the biggest Daniel Hemrick hater. I don't like him at all. Like, I think he is the poster boy for buying rides and not really being good. And so I come at this knowing that he could just run 27th. But then I also know he's only 5.5K, and that salary savings from Preece even helps. But from Gregson, it's $700 less. What am I able to pay up for? Am I able to get the Reddick and Chastain more often? Am I able to get the Keselowski? Am I able to even get the Busch if we think Kyle Busch is going to finish top 5? He's going to allow me to do more. I also think, there's a possibility where the Stewart-Haas Fords are still kind of trash, and that maybe this car has top 25 ability. And it's basically the same thing as Preece, where if he finishes 23rd or 24th, he hits value. And I don't think that's a huge ask. And I think it's plausible that he just kind of passes a couple cars DNF, and all of a sudden Hemrick's 24. So I like that play. Haley makes sense from 35th as well. Exact same situation, but at 5.3K. I think Haley's a solid driver. I think Haley's a little bit better than all the people in this range. Like, I think he's a better driver than Burton, better than Hemrick, better than Kraus. He's just kind of better in this group. So I think he can outrun them. You get a couple DNFs, a couple of issues with some other guys. All of a sudden, Haley's 35th to 25th reaching value. The real play I like in this range, though, is Zane Smith, because I feel like he's the only one with true speed. He's the only one that is going to show up in the race.
Cars are fast, right? Spire cars are good.
Yeah, I feel like that's the key here. Is LaJoy qualified 17th, host of our 14th. He's 24th. The entire group showed speed in their car. So if he can deliver a good race, I think that's the first step, is that he has a fast car. The other caveat here is, a lot of guys don't go a lap down anymore. Like, they're able to maintain the lead lap a lot easier with this car because everyone's running a lot closer in terms of overall speed. I think it's a lot more likely that Zane Smith stays on the lead lap late into this race, whereas I can see Hemrick, Preece, Gregson being a lap down in stage 1. Zane Smith might be able to hang on the lead lap, and if he's able to do that throughout the race, we get a late restart or two, we get a couple of late little variance things thrown in there. We can see Zane Smith challenge for a top 15. and that would be almost a 40-point score at 5.7K. So I'm trusting the speed a little bit here. I like the track position aspect. I think 17th is going to score perfectly fine. I talked about 30 points for Haley and Priest if they can get in that 24-25 range. Well, Zane Smith finishing 17th. I believe does the same thing. So 18th is 25 points plus 6 points for 31 for 18th. I think that's a reasonable outcome for Zane Smith, and he's going to go low owned. I think the car's fast, and so I like to play in tournaments a lot, and that's someone I'm going to attack.
I love it. I love Zane. He's definitely jumped out to me as a guy that I was looking at too when I did my abbreviated research.
I know you're retired and all that, but where are you at on JJ Yeley? How much you playing to him?
Yeah, I ain't playing shit of JJ Yeley, I don't think.
Dude, he might be lapped in 12 laps. That's it was funny. They were talking about how he failed tech and they're trying to kick out his crew chief, but he doesn't have a crew chief, so they kicked out the car chief, and so they kicked out the crew chief. So I don't even know if anyone's working on the car. Like I have no idea.
Like 50 miles per hour slower or something stupid. Yeah, he might cause a wreck today. So
yeah. So yes, the answer is Yaley's probably gonna do nothing. He's gonna be way off the pace. I don't know why they showed up. I wonder. I know there's no charter agreement right now, so maybe it pays enough to show up and finish 37th. I don't know how that works. But yeah, that it's weird that they went to Vegas to try to run the race for sure.
All right, so just rounding out, this value range here. I agree with you on the Haley, the Krauses, the Hemricks. I think the reality is it's all those guys: Haley, Hemrick, Burton, Kraus, Barry, Gregson, Priest. They're all going to be fighting over the same positions, right? From about 25th to 29th, 30th, somewhere around there. So like, who do you really have that much confidence in being better, right? At least you get the salary savings on some of those guys. So, you didn't mention your boy Carson Hocevar. You think he can pay off there at the salary at 5,800, starting 14?
Starts too high.
Too high. All right.
Too high. He's not like we talk. So basically 30 points in my head is the threshold where I start caring about these drivers, right? He needs 13th to do that. Like, I'm not picking Carson Hocevar to finish the top 13 at Vegas in this field. Like, so that'd be awesome. Like, that would be fantastic. But no, I'm not putting money on that. Right. I look at DFS like the stock market, and I treat everything like investments, and I'm not investing in that play.
All right, I love it. So I think we broke through the whole range. Is pretty good. We talked about pretty much every driver. I know it's a lot of valuable stuff, a lot of valuable information and insight you provided for everyone. But let's get to this stage in the podcast where we summarize everything for everybody, and let's get to the core four more. Right. Let's start with your core four drivers who you think some combination of these drivers are going to be needed to win big money today. The slate is going to depend on some combination of these four guys. I'm not saying to play all four of these guys together. I made that very clear, right?
Don't be lazy and play all four.
Exactly.
Larson, Reddick, Chastain, and Bowman.
Larson, Reddick, Chastain, and Bowman. I like it. Yeah. I mean, those are all. I mean, you got your leverage there with Bowman. It seems like you're starting with those guys. You're not starting with all those guys, right? But if you did, you would be playing Hamlin. No, I'm just joking. don't start all four of those guys. But yeah, love it. Let's go with
play them all together. You absolutely can play them all together. The issue with going Chastain, Reddick, and Bowman is that it may be hard to pay up for like a second dominator, and you may be kind of trapped salary wise. So you'll have to play around with that. Because in my opinion, it's more of a 2 dominators, 2 mid tier, and 2 value tier with that type of build. But I like all 4 of those guys. I feel like 2 or 3 of them are on the winning lineup. And so I want to attack that group pretty heavily.
Yeah, these are 4 guys that if they have a great day, Larson's going to have a good day. I mean, Larkin's going to have a good day, right? So
oh, yeah.
I called you Larson. So, all right, your poor 4. Your poor 4. 4 drivers you're going to either be underweight on today or you're not playing.
Austin Cindric, just because screw that. Josh Berry, who I think, we talked about that range. I want to be under on him. I just don't feel good about the situation. I'll let him beat me this week, and I'll chase some of the bigger PD options in the back. I think I'm going to be extremely underweight on John Hunter Nemechek because I think the field is going to be on him, and I think there's the opportunity for him just not to deliver. I'm trying to leverage something on this slate if I'm going to eat a lot of chalk up top. And I think Nemechek could be an area to kind of go under on. And then lastly, I am not going to be on Ryan Blaney. I just don't think Blaney's got the upside to pay off the price point. I don't see a lot of clear paths to domination. And for that reason, I'm going to shy away from it. Again, I feel a little risky doing it, but I think that lines up with this slate where if he doesn't finish like top 3 and if he doesn't lead a bunch of laps, he's not going to outscore the dominators and the big plays you actually need.
I really was expecting to hear Kyle Busch in there somewhere. Would he be on a poor 5 if you were doing 5?
No, because Busch still has some equity. 21st is a lot better than 15th. I think Busch is always a top 5 threat. I just, for me, I don't think the car will.
I know, but if you're playing 5 lineups, you gotta plant your flag somewhere. You gotta make a decision. You gotta be like, I'm not gonna,
Yeah,
right?
if I'm playing 5 lineups, I'm not playing Busch if I'm playing 5 lineups. But if I play 10, I'd probably have 1 or 2. Like he's a secondary. Under. Yeah, he's a secondary option off of the core 4. What are we at? Core 4 of Chastain, Reddick. Those guys are my preferred plays, but paying up a little bit for Kyle Busch is fine for sure. Like it's not a bad option. It's just I don't think he's got the speed that people are going to anticipate, and I think I can get under on that play as well. So yeah, I guess he's kind of on that one as well. Poor 5, poor 6, somewhere around there.
Trying to talk you into saying fade Kyle Busch, and he's just not going to do it.
No.
All right, let's go with your 4 guys that you think are going to provide leverage for us today.
Zane Smith, talked about him. Martin Truex Jr., we didn't really talk about him. He is my surprise dominator of this race. Listen, I'm not saying this at any high rate. Don't go out there and load up on Martin Truex, but of all the drivers in this range that I think could sneakily get out there and lead 50, 60 laps, Martin Truex really stands out to me. I'm very intrigued by that play. And so I like that one to be different. I think he could end up pretty low owned, and that could be a nice spot. Anytime you can get ownership on a potential dominator that may only be 10 to 15% owned and they hit, you have a legit shot at a big takedown. So really like that aspect. So I want a little sprinkling of Truex for sure. And then how many more I need? 2 more?
2 more, yes.
2 more. I'm probably going to end up on the value tier here with both these guys as well. Daniel Hemrick, just because people don't like him. I don't think people want to play him. I think he's a great pivot off of Priest to kind of be a little bit different. And there's not much here. I mean, I talked about some chalkier plays. I really just want to lean into this chalk a little bit more, but let's go. Keselowski's going to see ownership. He just will. Let's go Suarez. If you're trying to be different, Suarez had that top 5 upside at times where I can see him sneaking up there again, especially with this type of positive momentum. If we think Chastain's got a fast car, there's a good chance that Suarez has a fast car. Those guys seem to correlate really well. So maybe that's a play that can hit. He was 10th here in this race last year, 8th at Texas, 6th at Michigan. Like these tracks are kind of up his alley, and I think he's the type of guy that can surprise with the top 10. So let's go Suarez in that range if you're trying to be extremely different.
All right, BJ3 says Truex could dominate any mile and a half any day, which is true. If you look at, I just looked at fast laps in the next gen car. Truex is 2nd in fast laps at Vegas, only behind Kyle Larson. So definitely can score some dominated points at low ownership. All right, just summarizing it for you, Ryan's core 4 for Las Vegas Pennzoil 400 is Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, Ross Chastain, Alex Bowman. Poor 4 guys you should stay away from this week: Austin Cindric, Josh Berry, Ryan Blaney, John Hunter Nemechek. And the 4 more guys you can look to for some leverage this week: Zane Smith, Martin Truex Jr., Daniel Hemrick, and Daniel Suarez. Daniel and Daniel combination there. All right, Larkin, I do appreciate you doing that for us this week, getting us all set up, straightened out. We should be set up to win a lot of money today. If we don't, you guys know where to file your complaints at. Let's finish it off. Give us a winner and tell people where they can find your stuff at.
Yeah, Kyle Larson. I'm gonna eat that Kyle Larson chalk today. I think he wins. But I do like Truex as a contrarian pick. If we're trying not to be chalky, let's go Truex there. Let's give him a shout out. All the content, all my premium content can be found at dailyfanracing.com. I wrote 4,600 words on this slate. So it's a big article, like a big article on this one. I was kind of pissed off. So the first 3 races of the weekend didn't go how I liked, and that kind of pissed me off. And so I was extra focused to put more information out there. We also look like we've beaten our subscriber number again. Like we set another record this week, apparently. The number that Brett sent me was like very weird. I was like, how's it that high? Like kind of like look, I was like, really? So that's really, really cool. So I wanted to put a little bit more detail into that article as well because of that. I did an hour and 10-minute podcast. If you have enough time between now and the race, I did an hour and 10-minute podcast with Brian as well over there, Premium Podcast and stuff. But we covered a lot of the same stuff as this one. So if you check this out, you don't have to check that one out. Also got my projections and rankings though as well, covering every racing DFS slate for the whole year. So value for price, I think we're the best in the industry. I also think we have a lot of winners for as small as we are. Like we're not a big site, and we seem to churn out some winners. So hopefully we can do that again today. Hopefully you guys will join us. I'd love to have more people sign up. A lot of people are liking the content, so that's great. And then follow me on Twitter. And then the biggest thing, subscribe to this channel. I know, there's a lot of people that aren't subscribed. That's always the case with YouTube, where 90% of people aren't actually subscribed to the channel that they're watching the video for. So please subscribe for us. We're really looking to get to 500. Like that's a nice round number we're trying to get to, but 400 right up above us. So we're trying to get that this weekend, hopefully.
Yeah, Ryan knows his shit, guys. There's a reason I teamed up with him. Reason I wanted to pick his brain before these shows because he knows his shit and knows our things, and I see the green scenes every week, and I wanted to get a part of it, so I want to get a piece of it. So thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe, and we will be back for Bristol in 2 weeks to talk Bristol. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. See you guys then.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Have a good one. Good luck.